Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second keynote presentation at the third International Conference on Food Design. I am Dr. Francesca Zampollo. I am the founder of the Online School of Food Design, which is hosting this conference. And it is my greatest pleasure to introduce to you today our second keynote speaker, Jonas Pariente, and he's going to talk about one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Jonas is a filmmaker and digital strategist, but most importantly, for the purpose of this specific presentation, he's the creator and producer of Grandma's Project. Grandma's Project is simply one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. It is, and if some of you know my work, you will know that I'm in love with food and stories. And basically, Grandma's Project is the concentrate of all of these. Grandma's Project is, in fact, a collaborative web series, and the collaborative is a key word here, sharing the recipes and stories of grandmas from all around the world. Before I give the floor to Jonas, I just want to say a couple of words here. If you are watching this from YouTube, come and join us at the conference website at onlineschooloffooddesign.org, where you can interact in the chat room, hang out with us, network, and most importantly, ask questions to Jonas. Also, once you are in the conference website, you're able to have a look at the other scheduled presentations, the replays from all presentations from yesterday, and you're also able to go and have a look at the virtual food design exhibition, which is the first virtual food design exhibition ever. Also, we don't want this conference to be a secret, so feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues who you think might be interested. And our hashtag is hashtag Food Design Live. So feel free to share that with anybody you want. And I think that's it. Yes, once you are inside the conference webpage, if you go in the page that is called All Live Talks Are Here, and then click on the green tab on your right, you'll have access to the chat room. There are 3 chat rooms available. The one there where we are right now for all live presentations is called Chat Live Talk. Come in there, say hello, say from where you are connecting. I see already quite a few people, and yet again, there are so many different flags and people from so many different countries. Jonas, you'll be able to know there's people from USA, Siberia, Germany, Poland, UK, Italy, Uruguay, Spain, Netherlands, and so on. So welcome to everybody. And I want to give now the floor to Jonas. Jonas, this virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. But before I start, can I go off tracks right away?
Definitely.
So why don't you tell us about your grandma real quick? I never asked you.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Just 5 minutes.
Yes. Well, this is the thing. I do not have a grandma anymore. I only have not one grandmother, and my dad's mom died when he was 2 months old, and so I never knew my grandmother, but I know he never knew his mother, really. So there's a bit of a gap over there. But my grandma from my mom's side, she passed away when I was 17, and I was definitely too early for her, and I was definitely too early for me, because I was just about entering that stage of my life when I really appreciated the role of grandmothers in general and the presence of my own grandmother in my own life. So since then, I think a few years after that, my deep passion for old people started, and that also was my last grandparents who died, and so I just spent a lot of time missing all of them. And so when I found your project, well, besides crying a lot, I just found it so comforting and so beautiful to see that so many young people of our generation, millennia, but then you'll probably say afterwards what type of people from what age you collaborated with. But it was good to see so many millennials who appreciated the role that their grandmother played in their life. And all of this done through food, which is, it's the essence of life, is what brings us all together. So that's why I am in love with your project. And every time I see one of the videos from your project, I just wished that my grandmother had been here, and I would have definitely participated. So back to you.
Okay, thanks. I didn't ask, of course, for the compliments about my project, but it's rather, when I have time, I usually start asking people about who still have a grandma or both grandmas and who don't have grandmas anymore, in the audience when I speak to an actual audience. And I think by entering the conference like that, it kind of puts everyone at the same level, because people kind of know already or feel already where I'm coming from. So
yeah, we have seen your grandmother. So
right.
She's lovely, by the way.
Thanks. So basically, I'm Jonas. I'm a filmmaker and digital strategist, as you said, and I started as a documentary filmmaker. I'll just say a quick word about what I do and where I come from professionally, and then I'll explain more about the project. But so about 10 years from now, I was studying documentary film in New York. I wanted to become mostly a director. So for a few years, I directed or tried to direct documentaries, which was a very hard journey. And then I opened up to production in a broader sense. And most recently, I also opened up my activity to digital strategy and digital communication. So now I have a small company in Paris where we produce content and advise people on how to reach out to people with their campaigns, with their projects. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we specialize in crowdfunding. So we mostly work with people who have film projects that are work in progress, and at some stage they need financing and they want to open up to the crowd, the public. So we specialize in crowdfunding, which I think is in a way there's the bridge between crowdfunding and grandma's projects, in the sense that it's crowd-based, crowdsourced, and it's collaborative. So I'm quite happy about that. And now, so back to grandma's project, I'll quickly start showing the website, how it is now. So grandma's project is, as you said, a collaborative web series where filmmakers from around the world share films that are not already made. We produce them, basically. So they make films about their own grandmothers. And the only basic rule that they have to follow is that the films last more or less 8 minutes. It's obviously a film about their own grandma. It's not me who's going around the world to film portraits of grandma. It's really different filmmakers filming their own grandma. And each film kind of follows the transmission, the passing down of one recipe from the grandma to the filmmaker. So here we have the latest film put online, which it's called Frikadelle. So it's a Danish meatball, but the film was shot in Paris. Here we have Knedel, which is a Croatian recipe filmed in Zagreb in Croatia, but the filmmaker is now living in the US. And Merci is a film shot in Brazil, but the recipe itself is Lebanese, and it's a Brazilian family with Lebanese roots. There are more films, there are more stuff that I want to share, but at this stage I'll just stop sharing real quick. How do I stop that again? Stop sharing is
You just go back to Google Hangouts and you click on the green dot again.
Okay, let me see. How is that? Yeah. Cool. So I'll answer the question how the project started, because it's usually the classic question, so we will save that. We'll skip that. So basically, before I started documentary school in New York, I had to show a portfolio to get in the school, and I never had done a documentary before. I was coming from a sociology background. So the first film that I wanted to make, or the first project that I wanted to make, was a documentary about my two grandmas. And so I was living in Paris. I was born in Paris and living in Paris. And one of my grandma was Polish, a Jewish Polish, and my other grandma was Egyptian Jewish. And so I was raised in Paris with my brother and sister and cousins in that cultural mix. So you have those two basically cultures, the Polish, the Egyptian, and also the French. So it makes three altogether. And so I wanted to make a film questioning that cultural background and heritage through a cross portrait of my two grandmas, and without any other direction than that. And quite obviously, or quite naturally, the filming was really taking place in the kitchens. And I did a lot of things with them. I went, just walking the streets. I spent time with them, interviewing them and everything. But really, there was a lot of scenes taking place in the kitchen, because that's where they would basically spend time. And also, I knew that to kind of explore those identities, food was a very great entry point, because it was one of the most significant differences between my grandmas, beyond the fact that they didn't speak super good French and they had their own accent, and one would speak Arabic and the other one would speak Polish or Yiddish. I kind of felt that the differences were most obvious in what I ate, basically, because the tastes were so different, and you basically just eating what they were cooking was kind of already a travel, either to the Mediterranean or to like Slavic countries. So I filmed them for like many months and started making a film, and so I sent that work in progress to my school in New York, and I got in. And so basically I dropped the project because my portfolio was satisfying enough so that the school could take me in. And so in New York I started filming other stuff. And while I was living there, my Polish grandma died. She was my mom's mom. And so several other years passed, and for me that initial project could basically never be completed, because one of my grandma was not there anymore, and I didn't have enough footage to complete the film. So I really moved to something else. And in 2013, as I said earlier, I was trying to sell documentary project as a filmmaker to TV productions or TV channels. And it was a very frustrating experience, because you want to find an idea that the TV channel would find sexy enough, and so you kind of not express necessarily what you want to say, but rather what they want to hear. So it didn't really work out so well, and I was quite, I was quite unhappy about where I was with my life and my professional life, especially. And so I decided to kind of make a soul searching, and try to find what I was really passionate about, and find a project that I would really keep fighting for a long time, even if people would say no, even if people would turn down the proposals, the proposal. I had to find something that I could believe in strongly enough that it will happen no matter what. And so it was a sleepless night. I went to bed, couldn't sleep. Woke up, went to the living room, started drinking tea, and taking notes and everything. And it was that night, like it's very easy to remember, because it came very naturally. So I remembered my grandmas. I remember the film I started, and I was like, so if I had to do something, it would be that, but I can't do it anymore. So what can I know I feel this passion. I know I have this interest for this, but how can I kind of move on from, or move forward from that project that I can't complete? And so quite naturally, I figured that if I can't make a film about my two grandmas, I can probably invite other filmmakers to make film about their grandmas, and we share them on a platform. And it was 2013, so I had lived 4 years in New York, so I had several friends, filmmakers from around the world. In 2013, there were already quite a lot of digital tools, that made it possible to kind of imagine that. I think in 2005, it would have been not necessarily in my sphere to think of something like that, because it would have been much more complicated to just organize it. But in 2013, the idea was quite easy to have, because all the tools were there. You don't have to be there to kind of help people making their films. It can be all online, basically. And so so I started YouTube searches. That night I was looking for documentaries about grandmas, people filming their own grandma, and I realized that several people do that. You know, they film their grandma, they film their grandma cooking, but most of the films or the videos that I was seeing were not necessarily films, were not necessarily stories. It would be like people filming moments where their grandmas with an iPhone, with a phone, or with a small camera. But basically, there was a lack of storytelling, and I found them quite boring. Even though the grandmas were cute or the recipe looked interesting, I realized that, you know, there was no strength in the storytelling. And so that same night, I figured that I had to basically talk to filmmakers. I had to collaborate with filmmakers, people who have a sense of storytelling, people who have a sense of building up a story. So that came very quickly in the process. And the last thing that I knew I wanted to go for was a UNESCO sponsorship. Because in my mind, when I started imagining that platform where people would kind of throw in their stories about food and cultural background and sharing those and everything, for me it was quite obvious that if we put all that together, like that kind of how would you say, like a depository of recipes and all the stories that are attached to the recipes, for me it would kind of constitute a world heritage that would go beyond my personal heritage or your personal heritage, but really constitute something bigger. And so I figured, like, okay, if I go forward with this, I need to speak to UNESCO. So that was that. And then I'll try, let me see, okay. I'll try to make the rest of the story like squeeze in within 10 minutes. So from that, it took me a year and a half probably to come up with a pilot, because I wrote a concept, I researched the whole thing, I partnered up with a production film company here. We went for financing options, you know, classical financing options, and nothing really worked. And I had to become a dad, basically. Or now I know, you know, back then I didn't know that I had to have a baby to kind of untrigger the thing. But soon after I became a dad, in July 2014, I kind of had a, I don't know. I mean, I can't explain why, but probably because I had to transmit something down to my child, and it became obvious. It liberated me, and so I made my own film about my grandma, which I could have done in the first 18 months, but for some reason I didn't do it. And when I did that film, it became much easier to sell the project in a way that, okay, you have that episode 0 that you can share, that kind of is my statement, you know, like that's what I want to do. And I want to invite people to do something that is similar but not similar, because everyone can have a different take on that same entry point. And so from there, I convinced 2 other friends to make films about their own grandma, filmmakers friends. And then we still didn't have any funds, so I knew that I couldn't really make step forward without any money. So we did a crowdfunding campaign. So now I can share screen again. So in May 2015, is it working? Yes. In May 2015, I launched a Kickstarter campaign. So that's almost 2 years from now, which helped me raise, maybe you see here, $21,000 from 274 people, including my parents, of course, including some friends, but not only. If I want to be real quick, so you have an idea that it's not really just friends and family. In that amount, I had received a donation of 2,500 euros from a New Yorker, a lawyer based in New York. I have received a $1,000 donation from a guy, an American based in California, who has Lebanese roots and fell in love with the project. So, and I'm speaking obviously about the biggest donations, but I have dozens of people who gave $10 or $50. And so it's really a group of people, some of them I don't know, who helped me kickstart the project, really. And so back then I already had that identity, the logo and some kind of a fake layout and some kind of fake website. But, you know, like it kind of showed that I was serious. I leave people maybe explore the Kickstarter campaign if they want to understand what we were doing and how we did. But altogether, it went pretty well. And let me see, is it? Yeah. And so basically, so that was May 2015. And with that money, we could create the website, the actual website that I showed real quick earlier. I had a small envelope for post-producing the movies, which is an important step in film production, because basically the filmmakers that I work with, they're all either documentary filmmakers or just like filmmakers at large, and so they know how to manipulate a camera, they know how to edit mostly, but they don't know how to color correct their film, they don't know how to make the sound mix of their films. And if you want to have a good product online, you know, that looks great, that sounds great, and that you can even show in a festival, you have to have some post-production investment. And so I knew the filmmakers wouldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it myself. So some of that money, it was dedicated to post-production. And for music rights as well, like some stuff that basically you can't avoid if you want to make a serious production. And so that was that. So that's when we started also creating our community on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram, because we had stuff to share. And I also, like, that's when I received the first proper push of enthusiasm from people. You know, like I had those 274 backers who were kind of my supporters and ambassadors. So they gave me their energy in a way, and they kind of validated my project, which was important because no one else said yes before, basically, until they did. And after that, we made other films, like I think 2 or 3. And at that stage, it was only filmmakers that I knew. So it was either friends or friends or friends, or, you know, like the word to mouth stuff. But it was mostly people that I reached out to and say, I have this project, do you want to participate? Great, let's do it. And a few months after that, I kind of changed the process, and we did a call for filmmakers. So I hired an intern who worked for, I think, 3 or 4 months preparing the launch of the call for filmmakers. So we listed film schools all around the world, we listed journalists, we listed blogs, we listed organizations. And so in last April, like 10 months ago, we launched that call for filmmakers. And the idea was to receive applications from random people, from strangers. And so now we constituted a jury as well. So we had a great jury with people from The Guardian, from UNESCO, from other great institutions. And so we received over 100 submissions from around the world. The jury picked 8 projects from those submissions. And now, as we speak today, those 8 films are all in the making. So 2 are almost done, and 6 others are either in the editing room or still filming, but it's an ongoing process. And the great thing is that I opened up to a circle of filmmakers that are not friends anymore. They're just people that kind of embrace the project, and they bring something else, because it's really when I can really test my project, is that I have this idea that I want to invite and share a principle with other people, but how do they actually interpret it, you know? And that's, I think, how we can talk about a collaborative project for real, because it's those simple rules that they have is treated very differently from one filmmaker to another. And so you'll see, if you watch the films that are already online, that, you know, one is very like a satirical comedy almost, because the grandma is so grumpy, and another one is very visual, and another one is more like mine is more like a personal and maybe like a soul-searching piece. So the films are very different from one another, which I'm very proud of. 2 last things. In January 2015, so 1 year, 13 months ago, I finally managed to get UNESCO patronage, which is basically, it's not a financial support, it's more like a symbolic support. So they kind of acknowledge that my project participates to a global effort of preserving or transmitting world immaterial, intangible heritage. The truth is that it's a renewable patronage, and I haven't renewed it, so I'm supposed to actually take off the logo, the UNESCO logo, from the website, because basically I'm a audio-visual project, and it's a 6-month patronage, so it's a pain in the ass to renew it every 6 months, and it's because it's digital, they don't feel comfortable with it, so I'll probably have to drop that. But at some point in the history of the process, the UNESCO backed it up, so I can say it all my life that we receive patronage anyway. And the last thing that I need to share at this stage, and I'll go back to the website, is that, no, sorry, I'll wait. So there are those films. There are more films coming up in 2017. I think we'll be able to share 1 film a month, which is great. From Brazil, from India, from Serbia, from France, from like we don't cover the whole world, but we cover most of the world. And so basically, because we received other proposals from people saying, I'm not a filmmaker, but I want to share something about my grandma. What can I do? How can I share it? Right now at this stage, I still stick to my line that you can't make a film, or we don't invite you to make a film, because it would basically mean too much energy spent for everyone. But we did create another tool that wasn't planned, but it's working great. Is a contribution tool where people can share photos and written stories about their grandma. So I'll show you real quick how it looks like. So not a filmmaker, no worries. And so people are sending us those short stories, and I'll click here on see more stories recipes. Yeah, and so we have this gallery of photos and stories shared by people from Ukraine, from Tunisia, from Mexico, from Portugal, from pretty much everywhere. If you click on one, you'll see that there is a story attached. This one is quite short. The next one might be longer. Not usually, it's quite short. I love that photo, that soldier grandma. And so on the contrary of the films which are selected by either myself or a jury, those stories aren't selected in a sense that it's very open. Like we don't leave stories out of the website or out of the project. Every story is welcome. Every photo is welcome. So we're in a very open process where people are actually super welcome to share those stories and to create that kind of emotional database. And actually, Francesca, I'm waiting for your story after this conference is over. And so before I finish, I do invite all of you who are watching to either, if you're a filmmaker, shoot me an email, even though we're not taking submissions right now because it's so much work. But at some point, we'll start production of other films. But I do invite every one of you to send those stories, like photo plus text. I ask you to forgive me if we don't publish them right away, because I'm so full of work right now, and I'm hiring another intern in 6 weeks from now. So she'll take over those submissions and publishing everything on a regular basis, which I just can't do right now. But from early April, we'll start having this regularity again, and really being able to interact with the community, which is, and I'll conclude with that, is that it's kind of a great story how I tell it, and like every successful step that we basically managed to reach out to. But now I must say that we haven't found more financing for the project, and even though it's a beautiful project that kind of brings all those energies and all this generosity from everyone, because the filmmakers do it for free, I do it for free, like everyone is pretty much working for free. I realized that it can't really move forward with no money at all. So one of the jobs of the intern will be to look for financing. We'll do it, the two of us, but I'll supervise her basically. But I must say that even though the project is great and get enthusiasm and everything, you do have to have financing at some point. So, and I'm pretty sure I can find financing, and maybe we'll have to go through crowdfunding again. But I would say that enthusiasm at some point is not enough. And if you want to be like, a great idea is nothing without great execution. And so if I want to deliver great execution for, like, say, another couple of years, we'll have to get more money. So I have to put that pragmatic input at the end of my presentation, because it's just not about a great idea or a good idea. It's also a bit about being realistic and trying to find, if not a business model, at least an economic model that kind of sustains the project, the idea. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Before I dive into questions, and I want to remind also everybody who is watching, feel free to drop in your questions whenever you want. I see already at least one, and I have a few, so feel free to jump in anytime. But Jonas, do you want to maybe just give us a little taste with one or a little piece of one of the stories? Everybody has you might have seen in the conference website, in Jonas' personal page, there is the promo, the trailer in a way of the project, where his grandmother is telling her story. But maybe Jonas can give us a little taste of something else. We'll see.
Can I share? So I'll share the latest film we published, which I love because it's, people kind of sometimes think that the project is only about grandmas that are like the Italian mama, or the Mediterranean mama, where they're all cook a lot and are so, like overwhelming with their love and attention. But this film, for instance, is about a grandma that is smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey, and is quite grumpy, and she doesn't like to cook at all. And it's talking about that, and I think it's another great angle that the project is sharing. So I'll show you maybe a couple of minutes, because you can get that grumpiness quite fast in the film.
Jonas, maybe you want to turn up the volume a little bit?
Il y a autant de viande
Perfect.
de bœuf.
D'accord.
Alors,
Il n'y a que ça.
il n'y a que ça pour le moment. Alors, on prend la farine. Dernier là-bas. La farine.
Ouais.
Ensuite, on prend un œuf et du lait. On le met dans la porte. Dans la porte.
Ouais. Tu me racontais pourquoi c'est quoi cette histoire de frigidaire là? Pourquoi il y a plusieurs étages?
Parce que nous sommes 3 dans la maison.
Ouais.
Il y a 2 locataires. Et moi, j'ai un étage et des locataires ont chacune un étage.
Elles sont de quelle nationalité là, les filles?
En ce moment, il y a une Française et une Américaine.
Du sel.
On met du sel, évidemment.
Ça quand même. Toi, c'est ta mère qui t'a appris?
Oui, forcément. Il faudrait du lait, là. Des petites bouteilles dans la porte. N'importe laquelle. En bas.
Ça va, la date est bonne?
On s'en fout de la date.
On s'en fout de la date?
Complètement.
Pourquoi?
Parce que je me fous de toutes les dates. Alors là, ce qui est important, c'est que ça soit bien mélangé.
Ouais. Ça, c'est le moment un peu précis de la fête, non?
I'll stop now. I don't know how it comes across in I don't know if people can read the subtitles.
Yeah, we can read the subtitles. It's a bit it stops a little bit, but it gives the idea of the story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And of course, everybody, you're welcome to visit the website, which is grandmasproject.org. And I was thinking .org. Okay. And just up above the screen where we are right now in the conference page, I put some of Jonas links, but the link to the website, which is pretty straightforward anyway, you can find it in his personal page. Okay, so thank you so much, Jonas. I'm going to start with Eric's question. Hi, Jonas. Excellent projects, compliments. Did you ever thought about talking with Amazon Prime, Fire Stick, or Netflix, so more private filmmaking companies? They can combine your grandmother's project short film with products. The audience can order and cook the recipe, ... question mark, just an idea. Or big lifestyle companies like Martha Stewart or Oprah's channel, own channel, or documentary channel TLC or food channel. That's a big question. Long question.
It's a good question. I love this question. I would say yes and no. So the no comes from the fact that some or most of the TV channels, either public or private, have restrictions. So if you're Netflix, basically you have to pay a monthly subscription to watch Netflix. And if you're, for instance, in France and Germany, we have this public channel called Arte that is two-country, like it's a bicultural channel, French and German. It's free, but some of the content is not is kind of geo-blocked. So if you're in Asia or if you're in I don't know where, basically you can't access all those content because they sell it back to Japanese TV or Chinese TV or whatever. And the thing is that when I imagined that project, and because I had in mind that it was a World Heritage effort, I didn't want those films to be the access to the films to be restricted in any way. So without any payment or without any geographic location issues. And so when you have that as a principle, it's very hard to find money in TV because they all have some restrictions. So that's why I don't have financing from TVs. But yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, and about like the merchandising, that's something that I do consider. I would probably rather do like I'd rather partner up with a company that is not as mainstream as Martha Stewart, but is more like that kind of. Or I need at least I would need to kind of collaborate with a company that share the values of the project at its core, which is something not necessarily about like making tons of money, but rather like being very passionate about respecting our stories and our backgrounds and trying to understand where we come from. So a company with those kind of values would be a great partner, and then hope maybe we could kind of design merchandising stuff that are grandma's project itself, like say with like a kitchen book or like a knife or like salt, whatever, but it's too early. The thing is that I'm basically alone with soon an intern, so making the films and just like keeping the energy going is already so much work that I can't have more space or more room right now for those extensions. But I would love to have the time to explore those.
So the documentaries now are available on the website, and I have understood correctly. Are they available somewhere else?
No, but on the website, basically, you can watch it from everywhere, as much as you want.
So you're not using YouTube, for example, or anything else. They are only available on the website. They're
on YouTube as well, but I've never shared those links really. So they're hosted on Vimeo. On my filmed company Vimeo, and then they're presented on the website. And so they are on YouTube, but I don't think they gathered many views, like maybe 1,000 views.
Okay. And the question I wanted to ask you: so are the stories all mini documentaries, or are you planning to like putting them all together in a big, like, I don't know, 1 hour and a half documentary and show that somewhere as a full-length documentary or whatever the technical term is? So
you couldn't, it's impossible to make it a full-length documentary that kind of crosses all the stories. Next Saturday, we do have a screening where we show 6 films in a row. So it makes like an hour-long screening plus Q&A. So It's like a setup for a classical documentary screening, basically. But because the films have so different tones and narration, it would be quite impossible to mix those unless I put my own voice as a voiceover, you know. But I don't think it would work necessarily. But in a book, though, it would work much better. I'm having discussions with publishers here in France about a book project based on Grandma's project, and maybe in that way we could kind of integrate all those stories in a different way. But as a film itself, I don't think it's possible.
Right. And so you said that you are accepting every story that comes through from people who want to share their small story with image. Are you also accepting with the same openness every film that is from a full filmmaker, or is there some type of selection in there? Or maybe you said that I didn't understand.
It's selected. Yeah. So basically the first films, I reached out to filmmakers, so I knew the type of work they did, so I knew where we were going, basically. And the second round was a call for filmmakers. So about 100 people submitted proposals, but not films. They submitted written proposals about, okay, that's my story, that's what I want to do, and here are my previous films. And I gave those 100 submissions to a jury, and they selected 8 projects. So it's definitely selected. And we can't not select it. It has to be selected.
Because you're really after visual quality and narrative quality besides the quality of the story itself, or the cuteness of the grandma, as you said.
Yeah. Plus also it takes so much time and energy for everyone in the process that you have to be kind of sure of, or you have to have a good feeling about the results that you'll be getting.
Another question that I wanted to ask you is about crowdfunding. It's really interesting to see examples, a successful example of crowdfunding, because but it's also a good opportunity to ask questions to people who actually made it to the end successfully. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people watching this right now who have brilliant ideas, but just lack funds, as you know, most of the time.
Right.
So, would you tell us something about how difficult or easy, hopefully, it is to put it together, and what are the ingredients to stay on the right theme in your experience to make it a successful campaign?
I'm afraid it's going to be way too long, because I do give speeches about that as well. Especially about crowdfunding, and there are so many steps and there are so many angles. So I'll try to maybe save it to two information, but there is so much at stake. I mean, it is difficult, and it is worth preparing your campaign a lot, and it's better to postpone it and be super prepared rather than jump rapidly on the launch of the campaign and kind of not be prepared. That's for sure. And the thing is that basically you have to try to have a feeling of what you can bring with your own network, because your own network usually brings or constitutes from 30 to 60% of your goal. And so you have to calculate how much you can bring, and so how much you will need to find from strangers, you know. And so how do you reach out to those strangers? And most of the time it's either through the content that you will be putting on Facebook. So you're making this crowdfunding teaser. Most of the time it's one people or the project holder talking to the camera mixed with the footage of, you know, explanation of the project. And so that teaser has to be, you know, quite sophisticated, quite well thought, so that people will want to share it and will want to engage with your story. And then it's also working to find media coverage, because that's the only way that you can extend your reach to people that really don't know you personally. It's through media articles. And so that's part of the preparation, is who will be the journalists who might want to talk about your project? Are there journalists talking about technology or food or culture or cinema, whatever? And you have to kind of make a list of those people and be ready the day you launch your campaign to email them and say, dear blah, 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 at The Guardian, I'm doing this. Here is what we were hoping for. Can you talk about us? Usually they don't respond. So you have to come again, like a week later, dear blah, 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 I raised 5,000 euros, $5,000. Can you share my story? And so it's a super difficult process. Of course, it's the difficulty is proportional to the goal that you're trying to reach out. And how much do you need as well? Like I knew like the lowest estimate for me was to at least raise $20,000. Otherwise, it would not make sense to try to crowdfund the project. So you have to find that balance between what you need and how much you can hope to get. It's tricky.
So the money that you raised were used to actually make the project in a way, all the technical things, correct? Not so much to try and distribute it.
Well, in a way it did, because the filmmakers are not paid. They do it with their own equipment, or they borrow equipment. So there is no financial transaction between me and the filmmakers, and I don't pay myself. I do hire interns who make like the quantitative work or the heavy work of, and the distribution is heavy work. Like if you want to really spread the word about the project, you have to spend a lot of time, a lot of days listing journalists, listing website, listing blogs, listing partners, and you have to be consistent in emailing them or calling them. And so usually the budget that I have, or the money that I had, would allow the hiring of interns, but not more. And so in a way you could say that I invested that money in distribution in that regard. Not only in distribution, but partly in distribution. Right.
So I would say thank you for your efforts and keep at it, because this project makes a lot of sense. And I think, I want to hope, I want to believe that at some point somebody with a lot of money and nothing else better to do will find your project and give you so much money that they will see it on Netflix or something, or somewhere else where you prefer. And I wanted to ask you, why is it important to tell these stories?
Well, it's probably just the reason why I asked you my question in the first place, about your grandma. It's quite probable that story of your grandma's is a part of who you are and the choices that you make in life. So it's definitely part of who I am and the choices that I make in life. So I think that it's, moving forward takes looking backward. So I think that we might be able to share a collective direction. If we kind of be more interested in people's background and people's early steps, like what their families went through, and what journey they had. So I think it just participates to better understanding as well.
And throughout your journey, this journey specifically, what have you learned about food?
Why don't you ask me those questions in an email before and don't surprise me with those questions? What did I learn about food?
I thought this would have been another of the questions you have been asked a lot of times.
Not in a very simple way like that, so it's quite huge, What did I learn about food? Well, I probably learned many things. I mean, most of the things I knew already, like the fact that it's very universal. No, one thing that I kind of do now, which I like, I'm not sure I fully explained it, but I know that it works, is that when I discuss, when the filmmakers are going to film their grandmas, we always have this discussion either by Skype or when they're in Europe. We somehow manage to meet at some point. And so I tell them, there are three characters in your movie. There's your grandma, which is the most obvious one. you're a character as well. So even if we don't see you or don't hear you, you have to build your story or edit your film so that we understand it's not just one single person being portrayed, but rather an interaction between two people who share so much already. And you have to consider the recipe as a character, because the recipe has a special relationship with you. And I mean, like you and the recipe have a special relationship, and it's for sure, like they have to choose one recipe among all the recipes of their grandmas. So why that specific recipe, So you must have a special relationship towards one recipe at least, So what is this relationship about? And most probably your grandma and that recipe also have a special relationship, because why did you pick it? Why does this recipe mean so much to you? And so trying to think of the recipe as a character, is very efficient as in a storytelling way. And I think that it maybe gives food a very active, not a passive role in our life, but rather an active role in our life that can evolve, that can be discussed, that can be challenged. And so I think that it's a good way to look at it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonas. See, at the end, the question wasn't that hard. Thank you so much for opening your heart and your mind to us. So if there aren't any other question, guys, I'm going to conclude this spectacular second keynote and by saying thank you to everybody who connected live. Thank you for everybody who participated in the chat room. And most importantly, thank you, Jonas, for your, first of all, for having had this idea and for putting this project together so that we all can watch it and love it and think about our own grandmothers, wherever they are right now. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us and to share your work in this platform. And I just want to wish you all the best, really, for your future.
Thanks a lot.
So everybody, I will see you at 5 p.m. GMT +1 for our third keynote presentation. Yes, 5 p.m. for our third keynote address. And yeah, I will see you later. In the meantime, have a lovely day and happy food design.